to Bad First Impression, a podcast about movies and where we meet them. Every week, me and a guest go to a film screening here in New York City and discuss how the theater experience affected our impressions of the film. Today, we're discussing a movie Trilogy, arguably not intended for theatrical distribution. We are talking about, do you want to say it here together with me? The Lord of the Rings Extended Edition Trilogy. I have with me today my friend KeriAnn Eng. The reason she's here for these movies I will make apparent shortly. But a couple of things just to talk about the experience in general before we even talk about where we saw it. This is the most cumbersome viewing experience I've ever asked a guest to participate in. Mostly just due to the sheer length of the movies and the fact that we saw them on 3 separate days. So just for reference here, the runtimes of each of the extended editions without credit, Fellowship of the Rings is 3 hours and 20 minutes. The Two Towers is 3 hours and 35 minutes. And Return of the King is 4 hours and 1 minute. One quick question. Does that make the extended version of Return of the King the longest movie you've ever seen?
I would say yes, probably. I don't know for a fact, but I don't
can't think of any other 4-hour movies that you've seen.
I mean, It Too, that was 3 hours.
I think it's like right around 3. Yeah.
And then I think the only other one I could think of was District 9, but I think that felt a little longer than it was.
Yes, I think District 9 certainly feels 4 hours long.
I went to see it with my family, and my sister literally just laid out on a bunch of empty seats and just went to sleep. So,
as in, she didn't even give District 9 a shot.
No.
She was just like...
No, she just straight up
was
went
it like
bed.
A moody teenager thing where she's like, I'm not going to even try it?
No, I think she watched like the first maybe 20 minutes and then was not interested at all and just...
Yeah.
But we were all there, so she couldn't leave because we were her ride.
I haven't seen that movie in a long time. I don't like, it's not something that I think back on and I'm like, I will probably like it more if I revisit it. I think I would maybe be a little bit more... I feel like I'd be like, I was correct to think that that was a very situational thing that we were all obsessed with that movie at the time. And now
were you obsessed with that movie?
No, but like it got a Best Picture nom and like everybody really liked that movie at the time. And then that director kind of had like, everyone really invested in that director, Neil Blomkamp. And it was like the idea that like, he's going to be like the next big guy. They wanted him to make like an Alien sequel. He ended up doing... He did Elysium, which is a Matt Damon movie that nobody remembers, and Chappie, the robot movie with Hugh Jackman.
And Diane Ward.
Yes. And he did, I forget, I think a couple years ago he did a horror movie that nobody liked. And then now he directed Gran Turismo. That's like where he's at now. Like that's the last thing he did.
And I don't hear much about that one either.
No, I feel like people's opinions that it's not very good. I didn't see it due to extreme lack of interest. This is not a podcast about District 9 or the films
No.
of Neil Blomkamp. We're talking about a whole trilogy here. I find on this episode in particular, it's very important to note that we're not here to like comprehensively cover each of the movies because that's the sort of thing that our regular runtime, even covering one of these, I think exhaustively we wouldn't really even have enough time for that. So I kind of just want to talk around, the kind of concept of these extended editions as well, seeing them in this weird, almost kind of unintended format because they were like home releases. So what is your history and experience with this trilogy?
So my dad was kind of obsessed with the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
As many a dad are, yes.
As many a dad are, and that's kind of why we were so into it. So my dad has this thing where he kind of gets obsessed with movies for a period of time and then he moves on to the next movie. Uh-huh. But since it was 3 movies, it was a long time that he was playing the same movie. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't the whole movie. It was just mostly the fight scenes. So
would he just like scrub through the DVDs? Like fight scene, scrub through, elves kissing.
Yes.
No, I don't want to do that. fight scene.
So I don't remember most of the Frodo parts because we just skipped over that. If you notice during the 3rd movie, I waited until Frodo came back on screen and I was like, I'm going to the bathroom. That's when I'm going because Frodo came on screen. I didn't remember it, but I remembered that it was not.
So that helped recreate a more authentic version of the movie for you where you're just like, cool, great, Frodo, time to take a break.
That was actually like an interesting Frodo part too, which I forgot about.
That was during Return of the King, right? Was that
the spider?
That's the spider. So let me ask you this. One, do you like the Frodo and Sam bits?
I do.
Yeah.
It's just not what my childhood was really based around, so I didn't fully remember it.
So there's no nostalgia, but like you don't watch it now and like consider those parts of the movie like boring or like drag it down, do they?
No. Well, I'm an older, more mature person now. I was very young when these movies first came out.
Yeah. Okay. So you said, had you seen all of the extended cuts before this?
I'm not sure if I saw them as a movie. I saw the extended part, the deleted scenes as their own for sure. Like just as back when people had DVDs. I know you still have DVDs, but like I would watch all the bonus features.
I'm the only person
you're the only person
who
ever.
has DVDs still.
Well, you're the only person really that I know currently that still actively buys DVDs.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Yeah. Because even before, everyone I knew bought bootlegs that didn't have the extended, the bonus features or anything.
That seems to be a New York thing. Like where, like, because like Lily, who grew up in Manhattan, she talks about how like her Disney canon, like her Disney movies that she like grew up with are largely determined by like which ones were being sold on the street, you know, the week that like they were out buying stuff. The concept of a bootleg was like totally not there for me as a kid. So is that like, did you guys literally just buy them off the street?
Honestly, I didn't. My dad just sometimes came home with a handful of DVDs and said, here you go.
Okay. So he's not, presumably he's probably just doing that. It's not like he's not like going into alleys and buying like DVDs or, I don't know.
I hope not.
Like fucking Quest for Camelot or whatever.
I love Quest for Camelot.
Quest for Camelot is like,
loved it.
My weird attachment to that is like, I know I've seen the movie probably once or twice. My attachment to it is that there was a Game Boy Color game that's kind of like, it's kind of like a simplified, like less well-made, like early Zelda. Like it's got some really light RPG elements and it's just kind of like a run around action game. And it does that thing that like a lot of early games at the time did because kids don't have any time. They don't have anything else to do. That like, it doesn't explain what you need to do next. Like, it's like, okay, you need to like get through this gate, but in order to do that, you need to like go throw these chickens over this fence over here. And there's no NPC that tells you like, oh, I need help herding my chickens. You just like have to you have to have so little else going on in your life that you'll just go and run and take care of that on your own. And, I feel like that was like such a thing, like with like from pretty much like, prior to the internet on any gaming consoles, where if you played a game, you had to just, if you got a shitty game for Christmas or whatever, you weren't getting another one. So you just had, you
literally had nothing else going on in your life.
You would run extra time, like you burn further into it because like, well, this is what I have. I'm not getting Mario, so I'm playing Quest for Camelot. That's the situation. All right. I have no other choice. I don't remember really anything about the movie itself.
I remember that I would always get it confused with another movie.
I feel like, because there's a two-headed dragon in that, right?
Yes.
I really feel like it's just that I would mix it up with Dragon Tales, or like I would kind of combine it in my head. Yeah. Like I think that's probably where like the confusion is, that I would just combine the two. Like, because if you tell me like picture the dragon from Quest for Camelot, I'm really just picturing the Dragon Tales one.
Yeah, now like I am too.
Yeah.
So,
but I think the difference is Quest for Camelot, I think one of them had like a long neck like they did on Dragon Tales, and the other one had kind of like a shortened, like a short fat head with like no long neck.
Yeah. Barely any neck at all. Really.
Did you have a bootleg of Quest for Camelot?
Yes.
Oh wow. I totally just guessed that one. Yeah. Okay, cool.
I love that movie.
So you had seen the extended cuts mostly like as scenes separate from the movies themselves, then, right?
Yeah.
Do you have a preference? Like, do you now that you've like, because now you've seen both versions of all three movies, right?
Mm-hmm.
As a cohesive piece, do you think like all the extendeds are better, or like does like one movie work better as a shortened one and the others are longer? How do you feel about that?
I think they all work well for different reasons, specifically 1 and 2 versus 3. 3 is, it's one of the favorites, or it is the favorite, I think.
I think it's a consensus favorite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember that one the most. Also because it's the most recent and it has the most dramatic battle scenes in it that my dad would play all the time.
Yeah.
But
it's very arresting.
Yes.
Yeah.
But the first two, so I don't remember them as well, but I also couldn't tell as much which scenes were the deleted scenes, the extended parts. And I think that says a lot for how important every scene that was written was for each movie, because everything added to it. I had like kind of hints or like kind of inklings like that this maybe was added or taken out, but every single part of it added to the story and added to like the characterizations of all of them, really, and especially Aragorn's relationship with Arwen and all of the elves.
Now, you're saying that felt like more fleshed out to you?
Yes.
I felt like that was like really underdeveloped, to be honest with you, Aragorn and Arwen.
Okay, so you do in Fellowship, the part where he's singing the song, I think that one was added because it felt like a little bit detached from the storyline, but it also built up his character so much and his relationship with Arwen, which is also extremely important.
Yeah, so here's my issue there in terms like, I guess I should like give a couple qualifiers here. One, as always, we're spoiling the movie. I have to be able to talk about all the elements of it. If you haven't seen Lord of the Rings, you should go do that. Then please come back here and listen to this afterwards.
Also, just because it's a great trilogy.
Yeah, you're going to have a good time with them separate. And then you're going to have an even better time coming back and listening to us try to remember all the details that will be now fresh in your head.
Yes, all 15 hours almost?
It's
14.
The 3 extended cuts I looked it up was like 11 hours, 26 minutes. Damn. Like if you run them back to back. But I would say my context for this is I like quite pointedly did not grow up watching Lord of the Rings. I actually think in like that really childish way, because these aren't like super like vibrant or colorful movies. And I was like, I had kind of like a baby's taste to it, you know? So like this Harry Potter, like to a lesser extent, I kind of rejected because they looked drab and their color palettes were like really brown and dark and gray. So I actually have like this specific memory. My parents were buying a car and the dealer, like I was like a young kid. I don't know. I was like 7 or 8. The dealer was, no, I couldn't have been that young. But anyway, I was like, I was a young kid. And the dealer was like trying to soften us up, like soften the kids, like the kids up to make the sale basically.
Yes, the kids are the ones buying the car.
But they're like, I never really understood that tactic where they're like obviously you don't want to buy something from a guy who's a dick to your kids. But at the same time, like if you're spending a lot of time trying to ingratiate kids to you, I'm like, maybe we just like go find a different Kia dealer. Like maybe we don't hang out here anymore. But he like to butter us up. I remember really specifically, he tried giving us a DVD copy of The Lion King 1.5 and the Two Towers.
Bootleg?
No, these are like legit DVDs. Like he tried giving us these DVDs. And I remember really clearly at the time being like, I don't need your boring ass brown adult movie. I'll take Lion King 1.5, please. So I like remember, and it's not like I like were like, oh, they're bad. I think I just had such a disinterest in them as a child that when I kind of grew up and I didn't have any relationship with them. So I early on in COVID was like, I've never read those. I should read them. And I have read all 3 of the books and The Hobbit. I can't remember very much of them because they're like kind of like brain fog lockdown reads. Yeah. Like I think they're the type of read where you're just like, I know my eyes scanned over all the words on all the pages. I don't, especially those that have like a lot of like long made up words and there's like old mythologies that you have to kind of keep in context for like the dynamics of certain situations or conversations. And I walked out or I finished Return of the King and I was like, well, I can say I read them. I don't necessarily know that I could, like pass an AR test about it.
Yeah.
So, and then I had not seen the second or third movie. I saw the first movie 2 or 3 years ago at Cinepolis down in Chelsea, RIP. Just kind of for fun. So the theatrical of the first one is the only movie I had seen prior to doing this deep dive here. So that's where I'm coming at this with. And having seen the second and third movies, with like no context for like what the theatrical looks like, they're certainly saggy. You know, they feel like they're 3.5 hours and 4 hours long. I'm never really bored during them.
No.
I
can mostly tell how long they were because of just how long I was sitting in a seat.
Yeah.
And my feet were like falling asleep.
Yeah. These are like really, there's been like some talk about like runtime because it's, what is it? Last year there was Avatar and people were like, that movie is way too long. Or not last year, 2 years ago now. 2 years ago, there's Avatar. They're like, oh, it's too long. There was kind of that with like Napoleon. Killers of the Flower Moon is like the really obvious one where that's like 3.5 hours. And then Paramount actually tried to sue some smaller theaters. I think maybe AMC too, because they kept getting complaints from audiences that they needed to go to the bathroom in the middle of it.
Yeah.
So they but that movie doesn't have a built-in intermission. So there's no uniform point at which to take a break. So they kept putting this artificial intermission into it just so that people could get up and go to the bathroom in the middle of it. I personally kind of subscribe to the whole, like the old maxim, like, well, no bad movie is short enough. No good movie is too long. I don't know. How did you feel like kind of being locked in with these movies?
I love them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't mind it at all. There were some points where I was like, oh, we still have so much to go. There's still like an hour and a half left of this movie. They haven't made it anywhere yet. Yeah, but there's still 3 battles in it, but I was fine with it. Yeah,
but you're not really like, we were talking about this earlier, where you have a moment where even if you're watching a shorter movie, like a movie that's like 100 minutes and it's really bad, I don't usually check my phone like throughout, but like I'll pull it out and I'll realize, oh no, I have 40 minutes left of this movie that I've spent the last hour not enjoying at all. I have kind of the opposite feeling with this, where I'm not necessarily like craving, like I hope this lasts forever, but it's like you said, I'll do the rough math in my head and I'll be like, I know I have about 2 hours left. That's not really upsetting to me, even though like at that point in the movie, you're like, yeah, I kind of got to pee.
Yeah.
And I'm getting a little restless because like my butt's not been moving for the last couple hours. Yeah. So in your opinion, because like these prove that like there is an enjoyable version of a 4-hour movie that like works,
Yeah.
Is this any indication that like, could this be viable? Like as like commercial entertainment at all? Like even because these are franchise movies that are like well loved and well known, but these are versions that are meant to be seen basically only at home. Like we watched this in a theater and it's like, I don't think it was even cut to be intended to be viewed in a theater. It's meant to be at home where you can pause it and watch so that you can treat it a little bit more, not necessarily episodically, but you can step away from it. You can remove yourself from it a little bit. And then the extra context you get from the extended version is how you kind of like re-immerse yourself in that. Mm-hmm. Do you think there is any version of like a mainstream movie releasing that's this long that like people actually like?
I mean, ideally, yes.
Yeah.
I want to say. Because do you remember when Black Panther first came out and they said the director's cut is like 5 hours long and everything?
The original?
Yeah. And then everyone was like, release it. I will watch it in theaters. I think they could have done that, but I think a lot of people will still have gotten
there
up
was
and
a 5 hours director's.
I don't know if it was a rumor or if it was real.
That feels like a rumor because I'm like, that movie is very functional. You know what I mean? Like it's like in terms of like plot, like it just works. Like everything. Yeah. I can't imagine a 5-hour version of that movie that isn't just like a meandering, because I'm like, I don't even know. The movie itself is like two, like it's a little over 2 hours. It's not that long. I can't imagine doubling that. I'm like, what else do you put in it?
I think people just really loved the actor.
Chadwick. I love Chadwick too. And I like that movie a lot. It's just kind of like, to me, that does kind of sound like an unfounded like internet rumor. You're like, I don't know how. I would love to sit down with the person who started. I'm like, what are the other almost 3 hours of like? No, just tell me what is. I want. That's the thing. I'm like, I won't even criticize like whether I think it sounds good or bad. Just tell me what those 3 hours would actually even be, because I'm having a hard time even guessing. A 5-hour director's cut, and the closest I can think of in terms of like a mainstream one is a couple years ago, and they were really clear this was never going to be released in theaters, is when Zack Snyder did his Justice League.
They did release that.
Oh, did it got in a theater? Well, it was like a COVID thing. So I don't.
Oh, I think it just went to Max actually.
Okay, yeah. I mean, but even that has like title cards. Like it's broken up to be episodic. So I wonder if like the way that like narrative cinematic storytelling works, is that even possible at that degree of length? I don't know.
I don't know. It's a long time to keep people's attention. It's a very long time.
So I don't know. I mean, have you ever gone to something with an intermission before?
Just 2001: A Space Odyssey.
2001,
and I just saw that like last year.
And that's like one where it's really purposefully kind of like put into the movie at the right time.
Yeah.
It makes sense narratively. That's a good intermission because it's also I would actually argue it's part of the movie to kind of step back from the experience of watching it a little bit and kind of remove yourself, and like the thought that like the time you spend thinking to yourself is almost like the movie wants you to do that, to like spend a few minutes doing that. This movie does not have any like attempt.
No.
I wonder if it's afraid of breaking the illusion, kind of the suspension of disbelief. I don't know. What do you think?
For which movie? All three of them?
Yeah, just like, or I mean, like, not even. I mean, we can talk about like how it specifically functions in the different movies, but I kind of think it's like in general, because there's also, how should you talk about these? Because Tolkien is like, well, they're really one book. It's The Lord of the Rings is the one book, and then there are the parts of the book.
Yeah.
And the reason why they were published separately is the publisher told them, absolutely not. You can't publish. Like, it's like, it's literally a printing cost issue. Like we can't make covers thick enough to like make sure the book won't fall apart before it gets to the consumer's hand. I don't know, like, could technically literally the breaks between the three movies count as intermissions in that case?
I mean, yeah, I guess unless you want to watch an 11-hour movie, because it did wind up, if you did keep it as one, it would be an 11-hour movie.
That at that point, that's the thing, is that if you want to do that, then I think this would like be in serious contention for like the longest continuous narrative film. There are a couple movies up there. I don't have the list off the top of my head, but like, what is it? Like Satan Tango is like 10 and a half hours or something. And there are, this is the sort of thing that I don't think I'll ever be able to convince someone to go to. But like I've seen, it's one of the theaters in LA does like, they did a series like every Saturday for like 6 weeks where they just showed like the 6 longest movies ever made. And they would just like start at 10 a.m. and you would have like either 1 or 2 intermissions, and you'd sit there and they give you a certificate saying like, I survived this movie.
I don't know if I would want to survive, honestly.
Yeah. I don't know. Well, that's the thing, is because a lot of times they're like really slow. They're the opposite of this, where they're not really trying to be engaging, like they're not trying to be exciting or big.
Yeah. The goal is just to survive, which is not the goal for these movies.
It's the issue.
I mean, for them it is, but
it's the issue with like kind of, it's not necessarily an issue. It's like built into it with like slow cinema in general, where the fact that you are spending a long time and not a lot is happening is part of the experience of the movie itself. That like you're actually like, the fact that you are getting uncomfortable in your seat is part of what the movie is trying to achieve. Obviously commercial audiences don't really have a lot of patience for that sort of thing. They'll just kind of walk out.
I think also a lot of people don't understand that that's the point of it.
I do. I've talked to people that just think I'm an insane person. We'll be like, it's like really great at like even something that's like relatively mainstream, like Uncut Gems, where I'm like, it's really great. It's extremely unpleasant. And it makes me really uncomfortable the whole time. And they'll say, what's wrong with you? Why would anybody want to watch that?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, because it makes you feel very strongly. I'm like, I watch movies to have fun. It's not fun to be sick to your stomach. So I don't know. That's the thing, is I really realize like we're kind of talking around it. I'm like, I just don't think, whether or not it's possible for it to be successful narratively, I don't think something this length can be released without audiences, even necessarily before they've even seen it, really being able to stop themselves from like getting upset at the thing,
Just the runtime, even looking at the runtime for these 3 movies that I love, I was like, oh, that's a long time.
Let me ask you, if you watch a long movie at home, are you are you like more prone to just like get up for frequent bathroom breaks, or do you still kind of hold it at home because you don't like to constantly break for bathrooms?
I don't like to constantly break.
Yeah.
I like to watch something fully through. I need to be immersed in it. I'm the person who will, if I think I miss an important facial expression, I will rewind.
Kind of click back 10 seconds. Yeah, I do. I do the same thing I do in a theater where I'll sit there and I'm like, I'm already sitting. If I get up and go to the bathroom, I'm probably going to like check my phone while I'm there. I'm like, I'm going to add 5 minutes on to when I'm done like watching this.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I'm watching, like it's built into the schedule of a day and I'm like, that will screw me. Like I can't, I'll be late to something else if I don't do it. So the same thing I do in theaters, it's probably why I can get through a longer movie without having to get up and go to the bathroom as much.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
because you don't have the option to pause.
Well, I'm just going to sit here and I'm like, I'll just have to pee and I'll just do that in my own home. So I was kind of looking up some really rough, and obviously I'm speaking from this non-authoritatively. I haven't even seen the theatrical cuts of 2 of these movies. Major differences between the 2 of them. The first, I was right. It's the only one that I had seen the original theatrical version of. Mostly they kind of extend and rearrange a lot of stuff at the Shire. Like just you spend more time in the Shire at the beginning of the movie. And that's the one that adds the least, but it's mostly just supplementary stuff, like extensions of like later little scenes here and there. It's not a huge difference. The 2 Towers apparently adds a lot of stuff with like Pippin and Merry. Like when they're off with the orcs because they get stolen off by a band of orcs at the end of the first movie.
Yeah.
I did notice there's a lot of that in the second movie.
I didn't.
Really?
But I also, Merry and Pippin are 2 of my favorite characters. So I think I always,
I'm a little, I think of them as a little interchangeable. Like I'm always, when I'm watching them until the third movie where they really kind of have their own stuff to do, I do spend a lot of time looking at them being like, which one is?
No,
which?
I also do that.
They're fun.
The whole time.
But yeah, no, it's like
because they're a package deal.
They are kind of a package deal. And like to the degree that I'm like, if they were one character, it might not even make that much of a difference, you know?
I disagree. They play off each other really, really well.
Yeah.
They are very important to both each other. And because kind of the whole thing with the Fellowship is that nobody is alone. And they are together almost the whole time. And it is heartbreaking in Return of the King when they have to separate. So, I tear up at that every time. So
I agree with you that it's like, maybe you're right. You've spent so much time with them as a unit that it almost feels perverse when they split up. You're like, this is weird. This is messing with me a little bit. Let me ask this then. Can you name like 2 qualities of Pippin that Merry doesn't share and vice versa?
I mean, he makes more mistakes. I mean, obviously he does. He is the one who accidentally calls the Balrogs and all the goblins.
True. So he's dumber he's more like,
he's more prone to, yeah.
Okay.
He is a little bit too curious in that he can't like resist doing some things, especially like Return of the King when he touches I forgot what it's called, the orb.
Is it literally just called like the Eye of Saruman, or is the eye only
Sauron?
Well, there's the Eye of Sauron, which is literally the eye from the tower. Is the ball, because he uses it to communicate with Sauron, is that maybe called the? I don't know.
No, it's called. It has its own name. I just can't remember it.
Okay, but yeah, he touches the evil thing that lets Sauron know where they are. So that's the thing, that like Pippin is the one who like is honestly kind of like a plot instigator through just like being childish or foolhardy. What's something about Merry other than he's slightly less foolish?
He wants them to be better, I think. He kind of leads them around and he like takes charge in things. He makes the decisions. He's
kind of got that moment in Return of the King where he tells him, he's like, you have to be like less. It's actually kind of weird where like I think that Pippin probably spends the entire time up until that point thinking he's like, we're both equal, like we're both doing the same kind of dumb whatever. And Mary's like, I have like a little bit of awareness about this and like you need to grow up like 5%.
Yeah. Because now they're separating us.
Yeah, it's one of that thing. It's like to the degree almost like, are they separating you because you just caused too much trouble with like, are you too much of a bad influence on each other?
Yeah, that's fair.
And it is kind of one of those things where it's like when you're, because you have younger siblings too. So when you're like a kid, and you're being an asshole because you're a kid, and your younger sibling is like, can you get your shit together? Like, we're trying to like get home from the ice cream store. So do you think you could maybe like behave a little bit? And it's always like a huge takedown when I'm like, fuck. It sucks. He's so small and he's got a good point. Like, I can barely hear him down there. And then the third is, I'll tell you what, I saw like a long list of differences. I can't comprehensively go through the whole, but it adds 50 minutes. I don't think it takes much out. I think it just adds a lot of detail. Like who's the like weird mouthy guy at the, like towards the end of Return of the King? You don't see his face. He's like, got
at the black gate with the girls. Yeah.
Yes, I can't remember what he's called, but I think
I think he's just like the Black Knight or something.
Sure. I think that's extended. Like I think there's not as much of that in the theatrical.
Yes, that is extended. I do remember that.
Like he's in the theatrical, just not to the
not as
like,
much.
That scene actually like weirdly kind of drags a little bit. I was like, we're like, he's spending a lot of time like taunting them and like holding up some chainmail at them.
Yeah,
it's very weird.
I think the chainmail maybe was in the theatrical version, but just that was basically it. It wasn't like a 6-minute scene like it was in
that feels like it is, and that feels like a book detail. So like I feel like that was probably something, because it's like that's how he convinces them that like Frodo might be actually plausibly dead at that moment. So you understand why, like, okay, I think that would make it into the theatrical. The rest of it is just kind of like a lot. It's a lot of posturing and like
just making fun of everyone.
And I'm like, at a certain point, you're just like, I do get it. This guy's a dick. Like I don't need to, like, we're really, it is now that I'm saying it's like, it is kind of like the one moment in that movie where I am watching it and, you know, maybe we speed things up just a little. I'm actually really glad it ends with him getting his head cut off, because I'm like, you know, I'm actually good because I've had my movie's fill of that guy. I don't need him to come back after this. So we've gotten everything we've got out of them as much. The one thing to kind of touch on here in terms of like compression, what makes it into different versions or not, is I know originally Harvey Weinstein did want these movies to be compressed into one movie. Like that was his initial. I'm like, I've never seen the Bakshi movie, the old animated movie.
Oh, I haven't seen it either.
I believe that tries to do the same thing. That at least is like, in animation, you can kind of afford to be a little bit more narratively flighty, right? Just the inherent nature of it means that you can just kind of jump from one thing to the next, and you can assume more in between shots and transitions. I cannot imagine any version of this thing like even functioning like as a complete narrative in one movie. Like even if it were like a long, like a 3.5 hour movie, I'm like, you would just have to cut so much. And I think a big part of this movie and like these movies and why they work is that they really do it really does feel like a slog, like a thing that totally is taken over their life.
Yeah.
Which it's just kind of like a metaphor for like when Tolkien was in the war. And he's like, that's really what it feels like, is like I just was kind of taken off from my home. And now I did this thing that felt like it lasted forever. But now actually there's like the real forever is like everything after. And I have to just kind of live with the fact that I don't really know how to live the way I used to anymore. It's worth finally now bringing up where we saw these. Now, we saw these at the Alamo Drafthouse. Mm-hmm. I've been to the Alamo Drafthouse many times. I think you probably have several times as well.
Just the downtown Brooklyn one.
Yeah, that's the one I've been to the most. They show these extended editions on like about a yearly basis, usually around this time every year. I'd always kind of intended to do it the last couple of years, and it just never worked out. Typically, the way these are done is they show them on a Sunday. They'll play them at like time for brunch, like 11 o'clock. These are great brunch movies because like they're, especially in the first one, where they spend so much time kind of like talking about food and like how great it is. And they're so long that you're like, you don't feel bad like getting a second helping of food or whatever while you're there. It's a fun time. Those screenings were basically sold out. Like everything except for like the front row, like all the way in the corner, where like I'm not watching a 3-hour plus movie like craned up like this. I can't do it. So I was just clicking around on dates to see, and I noticed, this is a theater I'd never been to, the Staten Island location was playing these. Keri, you're from Staten Island.
I am.
And I kind of immediately had this terrible idea. And I looked at those and I don't know if you can believe this, they were largely empty.
Crazy.
Seating
Insane.
charts. So we saw these on, the original plan was to see these on 3 consecutive Mondays at 2 p.m. each time. There's 2 towers we ended up having to see at a later added lower Manhattan time just because of some scheduling constraints, but we did make 2 separate trips all the way out to Mordor and Staten Island and all the way back.
I was generally so surprised you wanted to do that.
Yes. How is you were like, I think I asked you and I was like, great, cool, I'll book them. And I sent you confirmation. You're like, wait, we have to go out to Staten Island. Like, I don't think you would like fully clicked. You're like, oh, you might've been like, oh, Brooklyn, I've been to the Alamo before.
Well,
how did you feel once it was like, great, we're going. Yeah. What are your thoughts on I'm going to Staten Island?
I thought it was like, he wants to go to Staten Island. I don't think I thought you were serious. Did you know how far Staten Island would be?
No.
Because I know how far it is.
I've never been like, even like for, like a day trip or anything like this. This is my first time on Staten Island, full stop. Like,
did you look it up at all? Like how long it would take to get to that theater?
No. I just was like, this is available. I know you're like a Lord of the Rings person. Mm-hmm. This is a fun like theater experience that I've kind of always wanted to do anyway. And then I was like, oh, and you're from Staten Island. Like that will work. You're actually, I think, also the only person I know from Staten Island. I'm also from a place where a lot of people who are from there don't leave it. Like I'm the same way. So I understand I don't meet a lot of people from Indiana in New York either. So had you been to this theater prior, this specific Alamo? No? It
had opened up after I already left.
It's relatively new. Yeah. I actually thought it was a pretty nice theater. I mean, it's like a little dead. I mean, to be fair, we were going on a weekday afternoon. But it's like nice. It does look new, and it's like well kept, and the seats like have these. They're like really nice recliners actually. Like they don't go too deep like some of the ones that the AMC's do. Mm-hmm. So as far as like actually going to like the theater and like the dining experience, which I'm not always crazy about, but I actually appreciated for movies this long. I liked being at the theater. I shouldn't say I liked going to the theater. For context, I live in Astoria, you're in Brooklyn. Mm-hmm. For Return of the King, the longest of these, I had to, for a 2 p.m. showtime, leave my house at 11:30 to make it there in time to order food before the movie. And then by the time we had dealt with, we ended up on our way back, we ended up getting off a bus because there was a guy with a knife out.
The whole time that was happening, I was like, wow, this is Staten Island.
Yeah. So we got it. We like had waited for a bus, not like crazy long. Like after we got out of the movie, we're like kind of like a little, whenever you get out of something that long and like that overpowering, it is like you're in a little bit of a daze, and we'd like walked out to the street. So we get on and like a bunch of teenagers get on with us, like really rowdy. Is that like a really common Staten Island thing? I'm guessing.
There's a lot of high schools on Staten Island. Mm-hmm. The bus that I would take from my house to the ferry passed by 3 high schools. Yeah. It was always hell.
It does feel like the other time we went, and like at every stop, it did feel like there was a gaggle of high schoolers getting on and getting off.
Because there's nothing else for high schoolers to do on Staten Island except for go hang out at one of the mall or strip malls and just
buses. I mean, that's what we did growing up. Is I'll have people from here who actually like have stuff to do where they're growing up, and they'll say, well, what did you do? I'm like, we mostly just kind of drove around. And then once we had, once we're like, oh no, we've only got enough gas to get home, we would like stop at like, usually what it is like, it's as sad as is, we go to Denny's and then we go to Walmart, and you just kind of like, if you've been to like a Walmart supercenter, like one, like, far outside the, like a city, they're like a size of like a city block. And you just kind of like walk the square until like enough people who work there tell you like, hey, you kids get out of here. And that's like what you do far out. Is it that bad in Staten Island? Like there's just truly nothing else for teenagers to do?
I mean, maybe I just wasn't the most interesting teenager. But my high school did have a mall right outside of our school. Uh-huh. And most people just hung out there. There was like the McDonald's and the Wendy's. That mall is very different from when it was it was when I was younger.
Is it the same mall that we saw the movie in the oh, it's a different mall. Okay.
Yeah, it's on a completely different part of the island. Staten Island is freaking huge.
Fucking huge.
It's
I did not
huge.
I truly because before I moved to New York and people would tell me like the outer boroughs are big, I'd be like, oh, I'm sure Queens is big. But and I didn't really have any concept for that. Now I have more of a, even knowing Queens is much bigger than you expect it to be. Brooklyn is much. Staten Island, I was when I realized how long we'd been on the bus and I realized how far away we still were from our destination, even though we'd been on Staten Island for a long time at that point. And you were pointing to me on the map, where you're from and where your high school is. And I was like, that's not in fucking Connecticut or something. That's so far away. Yeah. I was truly not ready for how actually big it is. But anyway, every single stop, there is a group of 6 to 9 teenagers who gets on or gets off. And there's always kind of this it's like a cell's mucous membrane. The same number is always roughly getting on and off, but there's a constant transfer. Yeah. And so I heard a tapping. We were standing because it was a pretty crowded bus. I heard a tapping, and there was this guy who had been kind of intermittently yelling at a guy a couple seats over him who was not making any interaction with him at all. Pretty normal New York thing in general. That's not even but then I look over and I see he's got out a utility blade that he's not actually menacing any one specific person with, but he's got the plastic seat right in front of him, and he's just stabbing it, not stabbing it into, but he's tapping an open blade on it multiple times. And I was supposed to be, I'm we should get off at the next stop and we'll just wait for the next bus. And you were like, why? I'm because that guy's got a knife. And you're like, oh, that's what that tapping was.
Yeah. It didn't even really process in my brain. That's how, I guess. Yes. I don't know if it's New York or Staten Island. It's just I didn't even think about it. Because even if you didn't suggest getting off the bus, I would have stayed on the bus.
Yeah. Lily is from Manhattan, and she has kind of a similar, I think it is a New York thing in general. And I think it's this attitude of will you mind your business? I
didn't even turn around when he was yelling. So.
Yeah. They don't really I've noticed New Yorkers are they're less attuned to small details in their immediate surroundings. Whereas I constantly did you hear that? And I think most New Yorkers are if I reacted to every single sound I heard, I would never get anywhere. Yeah. And so it's a thing that even though I've been here for a while, I have a hard time totally changing to the way that people around here do it. But all this to say, by the time we finally got home, door to door, I left my house at 11:30 and I arrived there at 9. I arrived back there at 9:15 for one movie. Yeah.
And only 4 hours of that was movie.
All this to say, overall, no, I didn't really know what I was getting into when I proposed we go out to Staten Island. Did you know it was going to be You knew it was going to be this arduous to get out there.
Yeah, that's why I was so surprised. And then, I had asked, are you serious? I would be down, but are you sure? And then you said yes. I was
But your thought is you're down, as in you just like these movies enough, or the idea sounded fun enough to you?
Well, I'm also used to it because I went to school in Jamaica, and then anytime I would come home, I dormed. I didn't come home every day, but it would take me 3 hours to get home. Yeah, from Queens.
Yeah, because that's even farther out than I am. Yeah. So
I knew what I was getting into. Yeah. And I was totally fine with it.
That's the thing is that that's to me, I think of in drive time, 3 hours, you're going 75, you can cross the entire state of Indiana in that time. Yeah. If you don't run into any cops and you stay on country roads, you're fine. But that's so nuts to me that it takes that long to go that much distance that actually isn't even that long.
Well, to be fair, if you're driving, it's an hour.
Yes, of course.
But you don't drive in New York much.
In that way, it kind of felt cool to have that much intentionality behind going and seeing these movies. I'm it really did feel like we were doing it in 4D. We had this big, long, journey trek to get out there to them. And I'll honestly say, especially I felt this with Return of the King. It feels really good that I went and I know that this is the most unemployed thing I think I've ever done is go and see this movie this far away from home on a weekday afternoon. But I got out there and I was it's making the movie hit a lot harder for me. I don't know if you felt the same way, that you went all the way out of your way to go see it in this format.
Yeah, it was definitely a commitment. Yes. But it was also I'm also going on an adventure. With them. Not with them, but
Is Mordor or Staten Island cooler? Like which like
I don't think either one of them are cool, but
which one is like more dangerous?
I would assume the active volcano would
Probably
be more dangerous.
There's no active volcanoes in Staten Island? Okay.
That'd make it cooler, honestly.
It would make it hotter. But yes, it would make it a cooler looking place. It would be actually kind of cool. I know this would probably like fuck up the lives of a lot of Staten Islanders, but it'd be really cool for me who lives over in New York.
Over in New York?
I mean, it's Staten Island. That's okay. So like, I just want to. It is by like
technicality
lines on a map.
Yeah.
Is it really New York?
I mean, Staten Island did try to secede from the city and failed. So
when did this happen?
A few years ago.
Wait, this happened like recently? They were like, did they want to be their own state or did they just want to join New Jersey?
They wanted to be their own city. They just wanted to be Staten Island.
Within the state of New York.
Yeah. Yeah. Did not work.
New Jersey can have them. I think we can largely agree on that, right?
They're far enough. They're so much closer to Jersey than any of the rest of the city.
Yeah. I want to talk about like we talk about just kind of like on this show about like theater going usually specifically like within the city and how there's like a bias from like because I've done shows at theaters that are in Queens and in Brooklyn as well. And there's no like questioning those feel like they're like part of New York. One, my question is like these like things that I'm like mostly joking about. Do you actually feel like when you're growing up on Staten Island that you have a little bit of chip on your shoulder because people are trying to like exclude you and say you're not really from New York?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There was one person that I told them I'm from Staten Island and they said, I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Is this a person you're like meeting for the first time?
I think I met them like 2 or 3 times. It was very new.
Yeah.
But it's kind of that feeling for meeting a lot of people and telling them I'm from Staten Island. It was like, oh. Yeah.
Like you've kind of assumed a little bit too much. But I have the same thing with where I'm from, where I'm like, people will make cracks about it and say like, oh, where's that from? It's flyover country. I'm like, I get to say that.
Yes,
I get to do that as much as I want.
I get defensive about it
because I'm the one who grew up in the boonies, so I'm already down one from you. So I get to say that, and you don't get to say those jokes.
Yeah, when they said I'm so sorry, I was like, you don't even know Staten Island. Shut up. I had to suffer through it. Okay, not you.
But the thing, I know the same thing where I get over defensive, and then all we do is affirm the stereotypes that we're angry, violent people.
Is Indiana angry and violent?
No, the stereotype there is that they kind of, because it's obviously they're like from the north, but there's a lot of like very like complicated racist history there where like they were like, can we be part of the north, but like also we keep slaves? You know, like that, They were always that. Yeah. And so like a lot of what they have is like the kind of combination of the kind of like the Midwestern, like what probably most people don't realize is like mostly like Minnesotan, like very overly polite, overly accommodating, apologetic, combined with the kind of aggressiveness of like Southern hospitality, where it's like, it's a little domineering. Okay. So you get kind of defensive about it and you say like, this is my background. Please don't like kind of jump in on the joke because this is just for me. So I imagine that's magnified a little bit by having grown up so close to New York. Like that might be more annoying that you're from Staten Island and it's like right there. Like you can literally see it over the water. Yeah. Yeah.
I've had like people not from New York. I've told them that I'm from New York City and they said, oh, what part? And I said Staten Island. I was like, that's not the city. I'm like, it is. Yeah. It is.
Yes. And I don't know. Yeah. That's the thing is like, I'm like joking about it and I'm like, I can see you. And you're like, yeah, let's get the joke over with. Whenever you're done, I would love to stop being polite.
No, I mean, I don't love Staten Island. I was ready to get out of Staten Island as soon as I could. But it's also just like, that's my home. It's where I grew up.
It's the same thing. I'm like, it's always going to be a part of like who and what I am.
Yeah.
So aside from this Alamo, growing up, what movie theaters did you have in Staten Island? Like what were regular ones for you?
They are closed.
They're closed now?
Yeah. Or the one that I usually went to was a United Artists. It was a Regal. Okay. It was maybe like 10 minutes from my house. It was great. Loved it. They just closed, I think last year, which was very sad. We had like it was just a one-off. I forgot what it was called. It was on the South Shore that I only went to like twice. It started with an A, but I forgot what it was called. It wasn't like a big chain.
Yeah. I did some really cursory like research into this, and I couldn't really even find other movie theaters that like had websites and stuff like that.
No.
So I'm assuming they probably like you said, a lot of them are probably out of business or just like have no they're maybe like owned by older people who just like haven't set up a website for this or anything like that, right? In your opinion, like growing up, was Jersey close enough that you would just like go to movies there? Or I guess for you said like yours is like right down the street, right?
Yeah. So at the time when I was younger, we had three movie theaters.
Yeah.
All of which are closed now.
Yes.
Now they renovated the Staten Island Mall, and there's a very small AMC in there. And then there's the Alamo, and that's really all I can think of.
Yeah. I couldn't find any other like local one-off theater. And nothing that wasn't part of a chain. Like the Alamo has specialty screenings, but they are part of it's a national chain. Did you you have relatives who live there now? Do they basically always just have to go to the Alamo? Is that kind of their only choice at this point? Or do they go out of their way to go somewhere else?
They'll go to the AMC, but my parents spend a lot of time in Jersey because it's so close. We live basically in Jersey.
Yeah.
It's so close to the bridge that they'll just spend most of their time there.
Yeah. So it sounds like there's like not a lot of other like options like that.
No.
I just asked because I'm like especially like for like things I might do for this show, because these are the kind of outer limits of what I would do without just like straight up having to like actually like make travel arrangements.
Yeah.
I sometimes will like I'll be like, oh, I'm like going to go really far. Like people consider like going to like a late night one. Brooklyn can be really annoying for me with like late night trains, right? I'll go to like a late screening in Brooklyn and people will sometimes look at me and be like, that's crazy that you're doing that. That like you're going to give yourself that.
It's commitment.
Do you think like going this far out of your way just for like a movie screening? I don't know. What do you think about that? Like, is that too much?
Given that it was sold out everywhere else. And it actually, the travel time for me, because since I came from work, it kind of evened out to be the length of the movie versus the travel time was about the same.
Yeah. That was like not as obnoxious for you.
Yeah. So if it was like an hour and a half long movie and I was traveling for 4 hours, I wouldn't do it.
I think that would feel really silly.
Yeah.
Because like, even though obviously you might get home at like a decent time, you would be like, that was kind of weird. So it's almost like the actual like grandeur and length of the movie itself almost like justifies I don't know. This was an experiment, honestly, like to see if I could like, because I've had other people who are from areas like just outside the city who are like, I'd love you to maybe like come check this thing out with me and just tell me what your thoughts are. Like, or, you know, maybe we could go here, do that. And I'm starting to kind of test the limits of it with this. Let me ask you, is there any other movie that like, if it weren't playing anywhere else, but you saw it was playing at the Staten Island Alamo, would you go out of your way for this again?
Quest for Camelot. No, I'm kidding. No.
Quest for Camelot, I believe, is like also like, you talk about short movie. Quest for Camelot is like 75 minutes. Like it's not long at all. Like it's like barely like considered a feature film.
No. I don't think so.
Yeah.
Just because it's so far away.
It is a enormous pain in the ass to get out there. It is.
And we went 3 times.
It's your whole day, basically. Like I end up having to like basically plan my entire day around this. I will say, I don't think I've learned my lesson because I'm actually thinking about going back next month. The only Matrix movie I've not seen on a big screen, the third one, Matrix Revolutions, is playing there on an afternoon that I have off. So
is it playing anywhere else?
No.
Okay.
No.
So then that's justified. It's not playing anywhere else.
That's But that's the thing is, I'm like, for me, I basically immediately was like, I don't care. I'm running right back. I'm going all the way back out there. I don't have it on me today, but I like bought a shirt because I love the idea of like owning Staten Island specific Alamo.
Yeah,
merch.
I made fun of him a lot for that.
Yeah. I don't know. It's a cool. They have like, I forget what the name of the bar was. The Flying something. But it was kind of like a martial arts movie themed bar. And like this thing, the setup is like nice, and I almost wonder, like, you said your family has been there. When they go to movies there, are the theaters full? Like are other people there? No,
Not really.
Are these things nice because nobody has used them yet?
I think probably, yeah. I mean, it is new.
I want to talk a little bit about the audiences themselves.
Mm-hmm.
When we saw Fellowship, now I'll say this. When I booked the tickets online I booked all three of them at once. When I booked Fellowship, it certainly was not a full theater, but like we booked tickets that were like slightly off to one side because like the center ones were like already taken. And there were scattered like seats in the back, people who like maybe think they want their own space. And we got there and it was basically empty. I think there were like maybe 4 or 5 other people in there with us. It was a really empty screening. And it was, I'll say this, it didn't bode well for like, oh, we're doing this 2 more times and those movies are longer. Like, are we really weird for going and doing this? And that crowd had pretty much no reaction to the movie. In fact, actually, I would say like before I like be too repetitive about it, all 3 of the audiences were basically completely like even Return of the King, which is the only movie we saw that had like any real attendance there. They didn't care at all. Like it was very weird. And I was like, this movie is working for me. It's not that it's like, you know what I mean? It's not that like you have to have like a relationship with it to care about this. It's not like it has to be a full theater, which would have been really cool, but I don't think we were going to get. No. I don't know. I don't know if you noticed the guy to my right was like doing this move a lot. You know what I mean? Where he's like, I'll just rub my eyes open a little bit.
You were kind of doing that too.
Me, I did like once or twice. Yeah. But I was like, man, nobody is like excited by this. I don't know. What were your thoughts on like the audience? Like, were there any like unique reactions or anything like that?
Not for the first 2. When we walked into Return of the King, there was significantly more people than the other 2.
Yeah.
But
that was like a half full theater, right? Yeah. There were people there.
I was like, oh, maybe this crowd will like, I don't know, cheer when their favorite bad guy dies or something like that. And literally nothing. They're just the guys next to me on my side, just talking the whole time.
Talking. At like room temperature volume. At room like volume.
Yeah.
And it's very rare that I have a movie talker who is that bold. It's not very often that I have that, but like they were like carrying on conversation like you and I are right now.
Yeah. I could have understood it if it was like a loud scene and they were just trying to talk over the noise just so they could hear them. But they were sitting back. They were not leaned towards each other at all.
Yeah.
And they were just talking during quiet parts.
What was the one guy saying to the other? Like, did you hear like what was the actual content of the conversation?
It didn't have anything to do with the movie. Like,
he was just like, what are you doing on Saturday? Yeah. Like,
there was one part towards the end where he just made a joke to the other guy who was just like, yeah, we still have an hour left. And he went, what? So I guess he hadn't maybe seen it before, but then also like if he hasn't seen it before, don't talk to him the whole time.
Yeah.
Let him watch the movie.
Yeah, I get very irritated by it's like it's a thing that I have to learn. I'm like, it really doesn't matter. You're just seeing a fucking movie. Like, and like that's kind of part of why you're here too, is to like get the experience of like just being around you know, like a fucking random jury duty selection of people. And like, well, it's a grab bag. You get what you get, whoever comes at the same time as you. And I don't know. I can still get like really irritated by it. That was the whole movie that he was like that.
For the quieter parts, I heard them.
Yeah.
So there were they paid attention during, I mean, it's a 4-hour movie. They were quiet during some of it. But it wasn't the whole time, but it was often enough for me to like start getting pretty annoyed by the end.
Have you ever complained about a movie talker before?
No.
I don't know if I've ever actually done it. I like more confront movie talkers, like really repetitive ones. And usually it's not too much of an issue. One time there was a guy who was sitting right behind me at Walter Reed at Lincoln Center who like kept talking like the entire time. And after like the 3rd time I turned back to shush him, he made like one of those faces like, yeah. Like, and I was like, that's weirdly one. And it's like he was like a kid being caught. It's so funny, like being in the space like that, where there's these like artificially imposed rules that aren't like laws that you have to, there's nothing stopping you from screaming in a movie theater, I guess. Like obviously you might be asked to leave, but like if you, I've always wondered like if you do like one major disruption like that, if you just like scream at the top of your lungs and then you're quiet for the rest of the movie. I wonder, I truly wonder if like management is actually going to bother to do anything about that.
Well, I think at that point, if you just do it really quickly, like really loud, really quickly,
but like,
will they know who it was? It's a dark room.
Once the movie has started though, I mean, like let's say you get 10 minutes in and then you go, ah, and then like you immediately, immediately just go back to like being normal. Like you just sit there and you're like watching the screen. You're not on your phone or anything.
I think it'll just confuse people for the most part.
I think that would be so funny to do to somebody at the beginning of a long ass movie like this, because they would just like, you'd be normal for 99% of the movie. And they would just constantly be looking over at you.
Yeah.
Like you were that guy.
I don't think anybody would report you.
I don't think so. I think that like you would become a story for sure. Cause that's weird and memorable. Like the weird, like
the lady,
the weird, like face with, the lady, that film forms. I actually haven't told that on the pod yet. I'm saving that. I think actually that there is a infamous story about a woman I encountered at a screening on my birthday at the Film Forum a couple years ago. I've not told that story on the podcast yet. I'm actually saving it because it was at a movie that screens semi-frequently that I would actually go see again. So I might actually just wait and do it on that episode.
And see if it happens again.
See if it happens again. See if anybody I know who knows knows I'm going, does it to me, does what that woman did. But also just kind of like see, the thing is that it was a really long, drawn out disruption that happened at a really pivotal point in the movie that like, I was really enjoying the movie up until that point. And then that happens. And I was like, I actually can't I can't come up with it's too weird what happened in the theater. And again, those are the sorts of things. That's why I like to go to the theater, because it's like, it's almost fun to have your objective opinion a little bit invalidated by the weird flavorings that you get from individual experiences like that.
Yeah. I don't think a very brief, quick scream would have the same effect.
No.
I think it'd just be like some guy just screamed randomly in the beginning of it, and then the rest of the movie
know what
was
it
fine.
is that like that's premeditated, and I think that's why that wouldn't work. You know what I mean? Because I'm like, because I've sat here and I've like planned it out with you. It's not organic. I think something bad has to happen to me and I have to react loudly, or I just have to see a crazy person do a thing that they're not supposed to do. But it's weird, the really immature way that people respond, because like, as annoying as I find movie talkers to be, I have to admit I'm being a huge narc when I'm like, the usher said you're supposed to be quiet. So I'm actually going to go tell an usher if you don't be quiet. And like, he's like he's responding by being just as immature by like making faces at me. And it's weird. It's like acting like you're school kids. It's very bizarre.
Yeah. I'm telling the teacher.
Yes. I want to talk a little bit more about the movies because we haven't touched on them. We haven't actually talked about the movies a lot themselves, which is actually fine with me because I almost like the idea of almost entirely circumventing them because they're such a big, like, part of me wishes we had kind of just done this as 3 episodes. You know what I mean? I don't know. How would you like really and truly, how would you have felt about that? Like doing an episode, not necessarily like right back to back, but like, do you think that like we would get more out of actually discussing the movies themselves?
I mean, they're long enough and there's enough going on in each movie that they could have their own episode. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's not that I don't think there's enough content, but it's like, so especially when we walked out of Return of the King, right? I was like, in like the most boring way, I just kind of really like that movie. You know, like I don't have complex feelings about it. I just really like it. And I think it's really well done.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Do you think that like you could sustain conversation just about like, oh, I think this is really well done, or like, I like this element of it, or I don't know. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah.
I have many opinions.
Yes.
About a lot
so
of
things. Are you mad at me then? Because I'm kind of like taking away the opportunity to do a deep, I don't know. Maybe we'll come back and like do individuals on them. I have no like compunction about doubling up on something. Cause I'm like, I don't know. I could like listen back to them like, wow, you know, we really spent a lot of time like shitting on Indiana in our Staten Island Lord of the Rings episode. So
I mean, it's part of the experience, though. Well, Indiana's not. But
Indiana is not at all, and neither is Quest for Camelot, a movie that's getting a lot of time here.
I love that movie.
I went just to do one more quick Quest for Camelot digression. When's the last time you've seen Quest for Camelot?
Not as long ago as you would think. Not like super recently, but within the last like 5 years.
Since you were I was going to say since you were an adult, and
I still think it holds up
then.
Yeah.
Okay.
I love the song. Like every tree stands on its own. Reaching for the sky, I stand alone.
The thing is that you're making
it's called
a reference.
I Stand Alone. It's the guy with the staff. He's blind and he's singing it and he's going through the forest and like tapping on all the trees.
This wasn't in the Game Boy Color game, so I don't really remember it. I love the idea that like you're saying this and maybe it's only in the bootlegged version.
Oh my
like
God.
It's like a royalty free.
That would be amazing,
that's
honestly.
Awesome. And it's just only
It'd
in
be
the
the best bootleg ever.
No one could prove me wrong or right because nobody else has seen that movie. We're talking about
I don't think that's true. I hope that's not true because I think I have brought it up in conversation with other people and they didn't know what I was talking about.
I feel like it's such a generic enough name that people are like, I know what that is. And like, but the thing is that like you hear Quest for Camelot and someone might just think of any like random King Arthur movie, you know?
Yeah. I did have a King Arthur phase.
You had a King Arthur phase?
Yeah.
Okay,
I watched a lot of King Arthur.
That.
I just watched a lot of movies and TV shows. I was obsessed with the show Merlin. I just read into the lore and I loved it. I was young. I was a kid. Well, actually, Merlin, I was into high school. And I think a little bit of college. Do you know the show Merlin?
I think it's one of those things that like scrolling through Netflix, I've passed by and I was like, wait, this has like 7 seasons. Wait, this ended like a year or two ago. Like it's not like it's not even like it's not even like, oh, it's an old show. Like it's a kind of recent show. I don't really know much about it. King Arthur is like something I like know all the really basic lore of it, but I don't think that I've ever really like gotten into like more complex works with it. I certainly haven't ever had a phase. Are you still in this phase?
No.
Is the King Arthur phase in the room with us? Like
no, I have forgotten a decent amount of it. Mm-hmm. There's also just a lot of different lore, like separate from each other. But there's all these different stories that don't have anything to do with each other. They're slightly different. Lancelot is different. Gwen is different. So there's a lot to go through, and I did forget a lot of it. But there was a period of time, I think from middle school to high school, that I was really into it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I don't have any other thoughts on King Arthur right now. I'm more just trying to be like, I can't believe that like from the like what now 3rd Quest for Camelot digression we're doing, we've instead of like coming back to Lord of the Rings, we've actually like gone deeper into like more like, but actually like, Quest for Camelot is actually from King Arthur, so we're actually going deeper.
I mean, actually, Quest for Camelot is not about King Arthur, but anyway.
It's like, is it? Wait, maybe I had this wrong. Is it not like about like Arthur adjacent characters?
It's Arthur adjacent, but it's not about Arthur. Because
the protagonist is a girl, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is Merlin in the movie?
Not really.
Okay.
No. They're just in the world of King Arthur.
Not really, as if that like, is there
he's
cameo?
Yeah.
He walks in the background? Is like, that's Merlin over there?
I think he has like one line.
That's more lines than Merlin has in most movies, I'll say.
Merlin's an important character.
He is, but what I'm saying, I'm like, he's not like in fucking Michael Clayton. Like he's not just in all movies.
No.
He's got one line, in there. But I'm saying that's like, he's not like an extra who's like trying to break into being a legitimate actor. Anyway. I think this is kind of an interesting trend that happened in like franchise filmmaking at the time. The way the director was chosen is that Peter Jackson is this guy who made these kind of like really gross, low budget horror movies that are like really nasty and kind of pessimistic. And he, just like Sam Raimi, made this incredibly earnest, like populist, very like optimistic, based on themes of like traditional values, sort of like trilogy of movies. Why do you think they pick guys who make movies like Evil Dead and Brain Dead to make movies like this?
Because it's fun. Because you're never gonna have somebody who thinks like somebody who only does adventure will only do adventure like in a specific way.
Yeah.
If you have somebody from a completely different genre who is able to see it from a different perspective, you're always going to bring something new and more interesting to the table. Because if you're a fan of Lord of the Rings, you're not going to think of it like that.
Yeah.
And I think it's for one a good shock factor, but it's also very
I think
good.
he is a fan because like even like without having researched how true that is or isn't extensively, you can see the degree of detail and like he's like weirdly very precious with this, you know, like he treats it like it really matters to him, the material itself. So I don't know. I think it's just that even guys who like, that's the type of stories they maybe gravitated to early in their career. These really archetypical characters and the way the story is structured are just really attractive to them as storytellers in general. But I agree with you that like, because of that, there are like really effective horror moments in this and in like the Raimi Spider-Man movies as well, where like out of nowhere, something will be really scary. And because the movie hasn't been scary up until then, that moment hits all the harder because it's so jarring. And it's often really good to like reestablish stakes or like, especially like in the last, I really noticed this in like the last hour of Return of the King, where you are so the kind of horror of the battlefield and actually being in war is so well communicated. I think you like, it's like really, it's even in like the kind of flurry of shots that you can't actually make out a lot of detail. The little bits that you can pick out make it like look really overwhelming and upsetting. And especially because those scenes you're seeing from the perspective of like really small characters who they have like the giant elephants and stuff stepping over them. Yeah. I also noticed you like cry out like, oh, like when one of the elephants died. Yeah. Like I did overhear that at one point. I kind of share the sentimental. Elephants are the type of animal that even when they're bad, because these are like elephants with like spikes on them and shit, and they're like stomping on our friends.
But it's not the elephant's fault.
It's not, well, I guess
they are swinging and killing a lot of people.
They're the type of animal I don't ever want to see hurt. You know what I mean? There's like, I'm like, if not saying I want to see any, I'm not advocating for any animals to be hurt, but I'm saying like, if I see wolves get hurt, I'm like, well, wolves are nasty. I'm not saying all wolves deserve it. I'm saying that if I saw some wolves attacking some people in a movie, I'd be like, well, they should attack them back. Elephants, I don't feel that way about. I'm like, leave them alone. Get the orcs off of them and then let the elephants leave. Yeah.
That's actually one of the big things that I have in a lot of movies. I'm always like, the animals have nothing to do with it. They're essentially just slaves to the people. They're doing what they have to do because they are captured. Yeah. It was not the elephant's choice to have that thing strapped to his back, to have a bunch of people to march into war. And it's, yeah.
It looks like it sucks. And then also the
horses. What happens to the horses?
I think they just get stomped. Yeah. Like that's just
they didn't ask for that.
To them. Well, the orcs also have this other kind of like nasty looking monster. You don't see it a lot. Like it's only in a few shots, but it looks kind of like an oversized hyena. You know the one I'm talking about? And they I think they ride it. I don't think it like is a beast of burden or anything. I didn't see many of those like in the actual fighting.
No, it was mostly for the scouts because they move fast.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I like, that's the thing. I'm like, I'm actually, now that I'm like getting into the nitty gritty of these, I do kind of wish I could like devote a little bit of time because we
can do another episode.
No, and the thing is, I think I'm actually kind of like throwing that idea out to you a little bit. Okay. The idea of like coming back and like, let's just like go into it because I'm speaking non-authoritatively because I have a vague recollection of the books, as in like, I can confirm I like logged them on Goodreads. Like it's like I have that, I can go screenshot that, and had only seen one of the movies. And you hadn't read any of the books before, right?
I started reading Fellowship and I'm still like 4 years later on the same page.
You know, I don't want to call it a bad book, but it's especially in the early parts where there's like a lot of like descriptions of like ornate furniture and like long.
They are still in the Shire where I am.
They're not, I don't want to call it bad because I'm like, well, this isn't poorly written.
No.
But they don't they're not very propulsive. They don't grab you. And whereas that works for me in the movie.
Well, they don't go as deeply into it.
That's what I'm saying.
Like,
but
you don't find out that Samwise is his gardener until way later.
Well, I don't think explicitly. I think it's kind of like, it's this weird thing with something that's adapting something that's so well known, right? It's like, well, you can assume a little bit about what most audience members are going to know about you. And I think they're like, look, a lot of people have read Lord of the Rings like before the first one actually comes out. So like, we know most people are like, that's his gardener. But I think that everybody else will be like, that's his friend who like kind of works for him a little bit, right? But yeah, I don't know. That's the thing is I like our Revenge of the Sith episode we did where we did talk about Star Wars in general a lot, but framing it around the one movie, I think worked in that like we could frame it around specific examples that happened in that movie itself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like do I regret having gone and done all these? Maybe we could have just done one trip to Staten Island. Maybe that would have been enough to really, because like I didn't go the second time and be like, now I feel like I really get Staten Island. we were going to take the ferry home. It's important to note, and then didn't because that would have added
so
like
much
an
time.
extra hour and a half to our commute home.
Yeah.
So as much as the idea would have been nice, I still have not ever taken the Staten Island ferry. So
you don't have to.
Next time, I guess. But no, I agree with you. So like, that's the sort of thing. And I'm also like kind of using this to figure out more episodes I'd want to do. Do you feel even having gone and done this, again, we wouldn't go out to Staten Island for it. If I was like, hey, Two Towers is showing, you would just like go, like we would just sit and talk about Two Towers?
Yeah, I could do that.
Yeah,
Two Towers is my favorite.
Two Towers is your favorite.
Yeah. I think I told you this and then you were like, are you really?
Is that, I feel like that's a bit of an outlier opinion, right? Like I feel like for most people, it's like 3-1-2. I think, right?
I think that's accurate.
That's like, yeah. In my opinion, by the way, they're all pretty close. Like, I don't hear you and be like, that's crazy. Yeah. I just hear you and I'm like, that's not what I've heard from most other people who like have a good a strong relationship with these movies.
Well, for the longest time, for the life of me, I could not tell you which one Two Towers was. Up until, because they were all so smushed together for me in my childhood, I didn't remember which one was which.
Yeah.
But a few years ago, I wanted to do a marathon. I wound up just watching the first two. And while I was watching Two Towers, I was like, oh, a lot of things that happened in this movie I thought happened in the third one.
Yeah.
So what the hell happened in the third one?
Yeah.
But Two Towers has my two favorite battles.
It's Helm's Deep and what's the other one?
Isengard.
Yes. Yeah. They're good. I like with Treebeard and stuff.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you say that like you're like I want to have seen these so you marathon them. That's actually how I feel like most people go back and watch these. Is that like for most people I talk to, these are like a Christmas tradition. Like they like watch these every year on or around Christmas. And I have to imagine because they're so long because there's 3 of them. What I imagine is they probably whenever they turn the TV on for the day, they start Fellowship and it's just kind of on throughout the entire day. And at the end of the day, everyone's getting ready to go to bed. Lord of the Rings has just been existing in the background. Yeah. And now Return of the King is like finally ending. Yeah. It kind of speaks to the fact that the way people, even though a lot of people seem to like be averse to really long run times, the way that people end up defaulting to consume these is as one big work, the way that Tolkien always talked about them basically being one complete story. Yeah.
Yeah. But they're not paying attention.
No, but like,
I'm not a person who can casually watch a movie.
But I can't do it. You just said that your dad would like skip through like all the boring parts.
That wasn't my choice.
That wasn't your choice.
Also, even when those parts were on, I would stop and stare like during the whole clip because sometimes it wasn't the movie, sometimes it was just like YouTube clips or something like that, and he would just always put it on. But I was locked into the TV. Yeah.
And you would just like. How did you like react when he started skipping stuff? Were you like, I want to see what's going on here? Like, did you fight with him a little bit or?
We're a very action based family.
So you fought
mostly
him?
Because my dad. No.
Oh, okay. Well,
no, we for a while, a lot of our basis of judging movies was the fight scenes. We would watch them for the fight scenes. If there weren't a ton of fight scenes, we were not super interested. Like my dad, he does the same thing for Avengers. He'll just play all the fight scenes. and then skip over. He doesn't know what happens in the movie. He just knows fight scenes.
Okay.
Which is why I think
know
I know
about
those
YouTube
two battles
compilations? Because I think that your dad would fucking love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that what he's doing right now? He's sitting at home like watching a YouTube
Most likely, yes. And it would happen so often that I would be able to come home and he would have something playing in the background because my dad worked an early shift.
Yeah.
After school, I would come home and it would be playing and I would know exactly which movie. I would know the speech. For a lot of Return of the King, I was reciting a lot of the movie.
I know, I heard you.
You heard me?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I was like sitting next to you and I was like, at first I was like gonna like make a crack and like make fun of you. I was like nerd. And then like the more I was like, it's crazy how much of this movie she seems to know by heart. Yeah. Because they're like long, laborious speeches. Like they don't lend themselves to memorization. You know what I mean? Like they're like, I don't necessarily mean this as an insult. They're almost like a little boring. You know what I mean? Like they're kind of droll. So
I've had arguments about it. Like I argued with my dad about one of the lines in
you can just go back and play the movie. What are you talking about?
We didn't have it up yet. But the line in Théoden's last speech in the final battle, not the final battle. Where was it? Minas Tirith?
Yes.
There's a line that says, "Shield shall be shaken, spear shall be splintered, a broad day, a red day, ere the sun rises." And he was trying to fight with me that it was shields shall be splintered, spears shall be shaken. I was like, that doesn't make any goddamn sense. Why would you shake a
spear?
I don't know. And I argued with him for like 10 minutes.
Shield makes sense. That's not like, that makes sense. You wouldn't shake a spear.
No.
That sounds like the old, like the DVD ones, like you wouldn't shake a spear. You know what I'm talking about? Like the old DVD anti-piracy ads.
It was a whole argument that I argued at least 10 minutes, maybe even like half an hour until we finally turned the movie on and I was right.
Yes.
And I was very proud of that.
Yes.
But I think I could quote a lot of that movie. I mean, I did.
Know. You did. But no, like literally I was sitting there and like I said, at a certain point I was like, I just am too impressed to really have any like real thoughts or criticisms about this. Yeah. I'm not saying this to call you out or to pat myself on the back here. You went to the bathroom during this last one. You made it through the first two.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's talk about a little bit about like timing out your bathroom breaks throughout the day before you actually get to the theater itself, right?
I went to the bathroom right before the movie started. Yeah. Right before you did.
Yeah.
Like
we were
one trailer left.
I remember you were like, how many trailers do you have? I'm like, you should just go because like this is like they're playing the Argyle trailer for like the second time we've been in the theater today. So like you should go again. And we like kind of nailed it because I was coming back as like the Alamo pre-show stuff was like going away. So I was like, yes, we did it.
And then I still had to go.
That's the thing. Like I've got a pretty strong bladder. Like I can usually make it through. I told you I spent basically the entire second half of Two Towers, like around the halfway point, like having to pee a little to like quite having to pee a lot, like for the last like 30 minutes or so.
After Fellowship, you jumped up so fast.
Yeah, I was like, I gotta get up and go do it. And but I will just have these kind of like random moments where I was like, I think the Batman, which is a quite long movie, it's like 3 hours, but I had to pee like 40 minutes into it. And I saw that in the Lincoln Square IMAX, which I'm sure you've been to before. Like it's like the one real IMAX, which sucks because I was in the middle of it and there's no standing room in front of that. So I had to pass like 30 people to like get out. And like, they're all like, it's a new Batman movie. It was like new that weekend. So everyone's like, I'm trying to watch it. Like, that's the negotiation. You're like, I'm so sorry. And they're like, I'm trying to watch the movie right now. Like it's a little argument you have to have with each of the 30 people that you have to pass to get out of it. And then you have to do it again when you come back from it.
At the same time, I feel the same way about food service. It takes me out of it a little bit.
Yeah, I've said before, I generally don't really like dining in theaters. I think it's like, I'm like, I would rather, in the case of these movies, it was nice, honestly, to be able to, because it's really hard to plan a day to have a full like meal be done in time to get there and then have plans lined up right afterwards when like the movie said this long and take up this much of your day. In most cases, there are dine-in theaters in the city that have programming that I really like, so I'll go there. But I don't really love like the dining itself because it's like there's like lights on in the in the walkway. I feel like people, because they're doing something else, which is like eating, they feel emboldened to talk more and be on their phones more. And it just kind of makes it a more distracting environment. The runners, not to say anything against service people, but like just their presence. It's not that they're doing anything wrong, but their presence in there is like kind of gets in the way a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, like, and that's, you have to like have those like little arguments with people when you get in their way. I don't know. I don't know. I don't really like them. I'll go there like this if there's an interesting movie that I want to see that I know is not likely to play there or anywhere else, you know, again soon. But I don't know. Have you been to the Nighthawk before?
No.
No?
I've been meaning to, but I haven't.
Yeah. I mean, there's like, the Nighthawk like stealthily has some of my favorite programming in the city. Like they have really eclectic stuff. Like they'll do a lot of really mainstream stuff, and then they'll do stuff that's like mainstream and like meant for commercial America, but like it'll be these like kind of weird esoteric movies that are like that all bombed and nothing showed. And then they will actually do, like right now they're doing like a Louis Buñuel series, and they'll show more foreign stuff, which is something that frankly the Alamo doesn't really do stuff like that. They will do like, what is it? They're doing not to disparage this year, but they're doing like, we're focusing on 1999. I'm like, yes, the year full of like popular movies that everybody loves. And I'm not saying it's bad to go see popular movies that everybody loves. That's what this episode is about. But it's like, I like that there's a little bit more risk taking, and they're like, do you want to come see this weird thing? Yeah. You know, because it's playing at 9:30 this Monday.
And it's always at 9:30.
That's like their late round start. And it's like,
that is my bedtime.
I'm an early riser, but I love going to late night movies that are an hour and a half away from me by the nighttime.
Which is insane because you're an early riser by choice.
I know.
Well, I'm an early riser forcefully.
Do you know that feeling like when you, like on the weekend, when you wake up at like 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock, not even necessarily hungover, just you wake up late and you feel like the whole day is shot. I get that feeling at 9 a.m. If I wake up at 9, I'm like, the day is fucked.
Oh, I wake up if I have the chance to wake up at 8 o'clock, I'm like, I have so much time. Yeah. I'm so excited.
Yeah.
But for my work, I work in news, and I have to wake up at 3:30 a.m. every single day. Well, not every day. Weekends are fun. But I have to be up that early because I'm forced to. I would never do that. I would not wake up before 7 or 8.
Yeah.
If I had the choice. I used to not wake up until 9 or 10 if I had the choice.
Yeah. I used to do that. I really think it started sometime in like my mid 20s. I was like, I just feel like I should be up early. I feel like that's just like no one ever told me that. No one like successful ever demonstrated that habit to me. I just one day to myself, I was like, I just feel like for my own, I'm going to feel better about how I'm living my days if I get up earlier. And then I never really had any concrete reason behind that. I just started doing it. And yes, now I get up at 5 o'clock every day.
Yeah. I started feeling that way when I started waking up at 7, but again, that was not fully by choice.
Yeah.
But I did feel better about my day.
I don't know. Maybe that'll be a thing I do, is I'll get back to like a more reasonable one, like 6 or 7 o'clock. Because I feel like 6 is like not crazy, you know?
No, I mean,
it's early.
Don't like peer pressure you waking up later.
Well, because we're talking about, this is like, as much as like a movie show, I think it's also like kind of like a lifestyle show. Like, how do you fit doing these sorts of screenings like into a life?
Yeah.
And then how does fitting them into your life affect the way you're able to live the rest of it?
How much do you usually sleep after a late
night showing? So let's say I go to tomorrow night. I've got a show that starts at 9:30. It's for an upcoming episode. It's a movie that's 2.5 hours long. Probably take a car home just because it like literally it cuts my commute from like 90 minutes to 20 minutes. I don't know. I'll probably go right to bed, and I might sleep until like 6:30. Like that's probably how I'll go about doing that night. Because that's the thing is like the next day I'll wake up drowsy, but I'll almost be drowsier if I let myself sleep till like 8 or 9. I don't know. It's weird. It's like I get off my rhythm. Yeah. But I want to bring it back a little bit. So I think that like
from the 5 million tangents that we've done.
We love tangents here. I want to bring it back to like kind of talking about the Lord of the Rings, the concept of kind of like covering one of these movies. Because I'm like, I liked talking about Staten Island, going crazy far out of your way for a movie, like traveling for a movie. Like I liked talking about all the context around it. I am sitting here kind of thinking, I'm like, I do wish I could have like talked about the movies more themselves.
Okay.
So I'm assuming you feel the same way, right?
Yeah. We barely talked about the movies.
Yeah. And like, I was having fun when we did.
Yeah.
So I like love the idea here that I'm like, maybe we do Lord of the Rings like separate, like we do proper episodes for them, but like scatter them.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, cause here's the thing. I don't think I need to go do this experience again. You know what I mean?
I have the DVDs if you want them.
Well, I always like to tie them to a screening. I'm starting to try and like, I've been thinking about like, maybe I like schedule my own screening, you know, like at a place and we kind of talk about it in the context of that as well.
You mean like rent out a theater or
rent out a theater,
That'd be cool.
Find some place that will like let me project it somewhere, you know, that's open to different concepts here.
That would be cool.
But
can we play all the bonus features too? I love the bonus
do you
features.
think we just give them a DVD and we're just like
just play everything?
Do you remember when there used to be games on every single DVD and they were the worst games ever programmed, but they were so fun to play. I think there was like a door matching game on the Monsters Inc. DVD that I played like way too much.
The most memorable one I have is Shrek 2 with the American Idol thing. Or was it?
Yes. Yeah. And they were basically like kind of point and click games because the DVD remote and also
you can't do anything.
DVD remotes are so unresponsive. You have to like hit right 4 times. And then like old, like cheap DVD players, you'd have to like step up to the TV, put the IR blaster onto the DVD player and like hit right like 3 times.
And with siblings, they would just cover it.
But yeah.
So you couldn't do anything.
So I kind of wanted to talk about, a little bit like the idea of covering different ones. I think we both agree I liked doing this, like going and seeing them like one a week. I don't think I would need to do this again, although I would maybe see individual ones in a theater again. Like I'd be totally fine with that. If that were the case, I'd love to just kind of like cover like one, you know what I mean? And maybe even just go see the theatrical if that's what's playing. Like having already seen this, I don't necessarily need to like see it in all its totality again. Although I honestly like the pacing of the longer ones. Like I like that it has all this extra information in it.
But with the theatrical, you can see what was added and what's missing.
Exactly. So you can compare and contrast a little bit. So we'll just kind of keep an eye out for those and I'll shoot them your way if they come around. And then maybe I can actually deliver on the promise of letting you talk about the Lord of the Rings movies proper. Because they're more approachable if you can actually like sit down and do the individual movie itself. Yeah. But so I wanted to bring up a couple other like adjacent things like in Lord of the Rings universe. So there's obviously other movies. We briefly touched on the Ralph Bakshi movie. I've never seen this. I suppose if that was screening, that'd be a fun one to go do.
Yeah, honestly, I would definitely go see that.
It sounds like it's just kind of like an interesting little, we didn't really think about adaptations and franchising the exact same way back then. And Ralph Bakshi's this like weird pervert. So like that would be like a fun lens to kind of look at it through. That seems like an easy one we could do. There's the Hobbit trilogy, which we've completely not touched on.
I mean, you know how I feel about it.
I've never seen it. You like just get exhausted when it comes up in conversation. Let me ask you this, just point blank. The Hobbit trilogy, they have extended editions too. If they were playing, would you go see them? Like in this same way? Let's throw Staten Island out of the equation. Let's just say we can just go see them in Brooklyn. Would you go see the one a week, the extended Hobbit trilogy? She's really thinking.
Yeah, because I watched it the first time. I watched all of them. Well, I watched the first one twice, and then the other 2 I watched once. So I would give them another try because I am pretty harsh on the third one. Yeah. I hate the third one a lot, but I never gave it a second chance.
Would you say your main goal going into those is to kind of reclaim them, like actually give them a real chance? Or is your main goal to just kind of see how you feel, knowing that like your opinion might not really change?
Yeah. See how I feel.
Because like you're not really expecting to come around on them.
I put some distance between. Yeah. It's been years since that came out. So I think a little distance is.
That's fair. We talked about this in the planning of this episode a little bit. There is an Amazon show called The Rings of Power. That's like a way before prequel that for legal reasons is not allowed to be in the same continuity as these movies. I've not seen any of it. You said you watched an episode of it. Do you have any thoughts of it? Like other than just like, it sounds like it's like basically fine, right? Like it's not really bad and it's not particularly good either.
Yeah. I only saw the first episode. I would, if they were screening, sometimes they do like the episode screenings. I would go see that.
Yeah. In theaters. We actually, our next episode, I believe, is actually about some TV episodes that we saw in a theater, actually.
Nice. Okay.
We have actually one more of those like down the schedule as well. So that's actually kind of like a fun little thing. So
yeah, if that comes
it's
out.
usually for new series. I can't.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of a scenario where they would play like an older one. You might have to like, the closest I can think of is Momi when they were doing like their like best of the year, where they were playing just like movies that their curator liked. They did play one episode of Succession that like is technically not a new release because it's like 6 months old at this point.
Yeah.
But it is still less than a year old. So I don't know. I mean, that's the sort of thing that like, hey, maybe if we watched a couple episodes and thought we had some juice to them, that's the sort of thing that, especially if we're like, we can't find anyone to play that, we could maybe just project that on a wall at a bar somewhere and be like, whoever wants to come and we could talk about that. Yeah. That's getting a second season this year. I'll tell you what, before we come back to talk about any of these that might show anywhere, I'll do my best to make sure I've seen whatever's out at that point. Because I'm not interested, you know, like I like these mostly for the story and the characters that are actually in them, but I do like the extra context and the lore stuff. I don't know. How did you feel after watching an episode?
Honestly, I don't fully remember what went on because I was so taken aback by Cate Blanchett's. She has a very significant, like a very specific voice.
You don't need to tell me that she's like amazing.
But
well, she's recast, right? Because
it's about her when she's younger,
which is crazy for an immortal person who's probably looked the same for thousands of years. But I digress anyway.
So the main character is Galadriel. Her voice just throws me off the entire episode. It's a very plain voice, and Cate Blanchett's voice and her entire portrayal of Galadriel was it was huge. It was very like significant.
She's like not even in that much of the movies.
No.
And it's like,
but she leaves a huge impact.
Extremely strongly felt.
Yeah. But her voice, the way that she carries herself in the show, it didn't do it for me.
Yeah.
And then, so I was really thrown off by that through most of the episode. And then the other thing was Elrond is also in it, also as a younger elf, and he's blonde.
Yes.
And his defining feature is his long, dark black hair.
Yeah. It's these things where I'm like, I generally.
It's also not Hugo Weaving, but you know.
Yeah. I mean, well, that would be great. He's been getting cut, because he wasn't in the new Matrix. He like is the king of being in a franchise and then being recast later. Because like when they brought back Red Skull in one of the later Avengers, that wasn't even him. Yeah. I think he stopped voicing the bad guy in the Transformers movie. He's in like every huge franchise, and then he just gets tired and like drops out of it at some point. Or they call him and he's like, I can't be bothered. I don't want to do that. It's so funny to me when they recast it, especially for someone who's like immortal, where it's like, well, I understand that maybe you change over thousands of years. I get that. You don't change from one adult to a whole different adult.
No, they're not adults. They're young.
Oh, wait.
Yeah.
What?
No, they're young.
This is baby
not
Elrond?
Babies, but yeah.
I know they're not. It's not like Muppet babies.
No, yeah, they're
like,
young.
Like teenagers? Or like.
The actors are probably.
Like 20?
Late teens, early 20s.
Okay.
Yeah. It's just, I guess it also in that sense, they're younger, they're less like weighted down by the world because they're very, stereotypical elf. They're very serious, put together and just like kind of a little bit flat.
Okay.
Like monotone, not flat, but they're a lot more childlike.
Yeah.
In this.
Okay.
And it just kind of threw me off. I know that it's thousands of years difference, but
it's one of those things. I don't know. Maybe he dyed his hair. I don't know.
He dyed his hair and her voice
That's
just went
something I would believe would happen over like thousands of years, is that you'd be like, I'm going blonde.
It's not even long. He has like a little coif.
Yeah.
And I didn't love it.
I want to quickly touch on actually the Lord of the Rings related thing that we're actually most likely to have a reason to cover soonest. There is a new Lord of the Rings movie coming out this year. It's an animated movie called the Lord of the Rings, the War of the Rohirrim. It's out this December. It's about an old Rohan king named Helm Hammerhand. Brian Cox is voicing him. Any thoughts?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
What is it? Because the Rohirrim, I love the Rohirrim. Do you remember who they are?
Are they just the people from Rohan?
The ones who got banished. The ones who were loyal to Rohan and to Theoden.
Yes.
So they got banished. Yes.
Okay.
That's Rohirrim.
So yeah, I think animation is a really fun way to continue this without reminding people too much of the Peter Jackson movie. Like it kind of is like where you're talking about like it's distracting watching the show where you're like, it's not the character that I have conceived in my mind. And I know it's a different continuity, but animation, I believe this is also going to be a totally different continuity from the Peter Jackson movies. And I'm like, oh, well, it's animated. So I don't actually really have a hard time differentiating in my mind in the same way that like nobody was really attached to the Ralph Bakshi movie because they're like, well, that was the original, right? And like, yeah, but like nobody really like thinks about that movie in context of the new ones. But yeah, absolutely. We should come back. We should talk about that one, you know, maybe do a little bit more like context, catch up with the show, see. It's funny, like Lord of the Rings is like, even though it was only half full, Return of the King is like, it's a popular enough movie that even though it's 4 hours long, it's 2:00 on a Monday afternoon, and half a theater of people still showed up to come see it. They might have been a little sleepy, but they were there. So there's passion for this stuff. And it's weird that the show just kind of, it has no footprint. I don't think I've ever heard anyone like talk about it to me. You know what I mean?
I only heard about it while it was on, because I think they did it episode per week. And that's the only time I heard about it. I didn't hear about it afterwards.
Yes.
Once it was done, it was done.
Yeah, I don't know, but we will check out the show probably, and we'll go see the new movie when that comes out this winter. Hopefully that release date doesn't get moved around, and we will keep an eye out and have discussions about if we would talk about individual movies or.
Listen, I'm already telling you right now, I will.
If the Hobbits pop up, we'll do it. We'll go do another one of these.
Not in Staten Island.
Not in Staten Island. Okay. But if the Hobbits pop up, you know, a little bit closer to us, then maybe we'll go do it.
Yeah.
I want to ask you one last question that I always ask my guests right before we leave. Sorry. What, and separate from all this sort of stuff, because I don't ever want anyone to feel like if they're brought on for something, they have to be boxed into that sort of thing. But what movie that's never going to happen sort of thing that if we see it screening, we have to drop everything else and make sure we go and see this thing? Like what would we have to do an episode about? I think I know what you're going to say.
Quest for Camelot.
It's Quest for Camelot. Honestly, great. I love the idea of a fucking 75-minute movie that we can just go and see. I haven't revisited in a long time. I actually have like the emulator on my like Nintendo Switch. They put the Quest for Camelot game on there. So like I am not like playing through it, but I've been like dicking around with it a little bit. And like I'll have to look up like guides online. I'm like, I was never going to figure that out as a kid. No 8-year-old was ever going to figure that out. But maybe I'll keep messing around with it. Hopefully Quest for Camelot plays somewhere. If not, maybe that's the sort of thing that we can find a way to get, you know, put up somewhere, because I'd love to close the loop on that one and really dive deep into your weird Quest for Camelot and King Arthur phase.
Yeah, I would be down for that.
Yes. Okay.
I know every single song. I know everything.
Isn't it one song though?
No.
Oh, it's multiple songs. Okay. I clearly need to re-steep myself in the lore of Quest for Camelot. That being said, definitely looking forward to that. But I just want to say thank you so much, Keri, for sticking this out, doing the biggest buy-in of any of my guests so far, and kind of figuring out in real time what this episode even actually would end up being.
Not much about Lord of the Rings, apparently.
Not much about Lord of the Rings. A lot about
Quest for Camelot.
A lot about Quest for Camelot. Maybe more than any one thing. Like, I'm not saying Quest for Camelot is more than 50%, but it's a bigger piece of the pie than any other one piece, I think. I just want to say thanks for sticking it out, going on 3 separate occasions for 3 extremely long movies, all in very far away places. This is the biggest field trip we've made thus far. I really hope that stays the case for a long time, because it's not sustainable to do this every single week.
But I had fun.
I had fun. And honestly, it's one of those things it's in like the most basic checkmarky way. I'm like, I've been to Staten Island now. Like I can say I've done that. And I don't ever have to go back except for to watch Matrix.
Yeah. And then never again after that. Never.
Yeah. So do you have any final thoughts on Staten Island, long movies, Lord of the Rings in general. Any strays you want to throw out there before we're done?
I mean, I have many thoughts about Lord of the Rings.
I know. That's kind of been the point of this, is how you have episodes full, you have extended edition episodes full of thoughts.
And we talked about it for maybe like 10 minutes.
Cumulatively, there's probably a good 15-minute, like, mostly Return of the King pod somewhere in there. Like, I bet we could find, like, if we cut it up. But yeah, we'll bring it back. We'll talk more about those movies specifically. Okay. Do you have anything to plug?
If anybody has a hookup for any of the Lord of the Rings live in concerts, I want to see those so bad, but they either sell out or they're like, there's so much money.
Yeah.
I want to see it so bad.
Those are coming soon.
Yeah. They're doing Two Towers next month.
Yes. Okay. We will keep an eye out for those. If anybody has any extra tickets that they want to sell, you can hit Keri up. I just want to go ahead and say thank you to Lily Steinberg for social media management, the promotional artwork she does for every episode, and helping to produce the show. I want to thank Kristen Eng for our logo artwork. This has been Bad First Impression. You can find the show on all socials at BFI Pod. Please help the show by rating, reviewing, and following on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, basically anywhere you get your podcasts. If you're listening to this, we also have a video version available on our YouTube channel, so please check that out as well. If you have any questions, suggestions, or thoughts, you can go ahead and reach out to us on Instagram or DM us on any other socials, or go ahead and email us directly at mailbag@bfipod.com. If you leave us questions, if you have screenings to tip us off to, or you want us just to kind of make us aware of just things you have about the show, send them in to us. We may go ahead and read them at the end of an episode. As always, I've been your host, Devin Warner. You can find me on social media at WhatIfDevin. And until next time.
Bye. I don't know what you want me to say.